online forum for the year 2024. We are thrilled to have a diverse and esteemed audience from around the world joining us today. Thank you for being part of this virtual forum, and we look forward to an engaging and enlightening session. Without further ado, let me invite the President of the PMI Sri Lanka chapter, Mr. Saman Kandanarachi, to address you all. Over to you, Mr. Kandanarachi.
Thank you, Shivantika. I hope you can hear me. Am I audible?
You're audible and visible.
Okay, thank you so much. So I would like to welcome all our first virtual member forum, PMI Colombo Sri Lanka chapter 2024, January 30th day. So this year, this is our first virtual member forum. Last year, we did a virtual member forum as well as physical member forum. So purpose of virtual member forum is to get international well-known personality in project management to share the knowledge with our members. So with that, happy to see first event, Mr. Lambert, who is one of the founder of PMP and well-known resource person in project management, PMI. So he also came last time in Sri Lanka to deliver, to address our gathering in August 16th, annual National Project Management Conference. So roughly, I'll explain the PMI Colombo chapter board directors. We had our AGM January 12th. Next slide, Dhammika, please. Yeah, this is our member board of directors. Myself as president, PMI Sri Lanka chapter, and other board directors. Slide is, Dhammika, can you move to the next slide? And Mr. Dhammika Mendes is the executive vice president and secretary of PMI Sri Lanka chapter. Mr. Lalit Vitana, vice president finance. Ms. Anuja Basnayaka, vice president membership. And Mr. Vijay Kumar Devendran, vice president volunteer development. Mr. Pasan Manukit and the events marketing. And Mr. Geshan Vikram Singh, professional vice president professional development. And who is our immediate past president, Mr. Dushantha Dasanayaka. So these are the events we are doing this year. And next slide. Next slide. Yes, we are doing this at activities at glance, member forums, and chapter exchange programs, involvement in regional initiatives, and membership drive, member attractions, trainings, CSR projects, as well as academic partnership. So let me invite Mr. Dhammika Mendes to proceed further from this onwards. Over to Dhammika to continue, and also he will introduce formally Mr. Lee Lambert, his profile. Over to you, Dhammika.
Okay, thank you, Saman. And just at a glance of the PMI's fact. So this is a overview within past 4 years, starting from 2020, and each data has been gathered in 31st of December of each year. Now you see the growth of the membership. It has become to 704 members, and also you will see the certifications. When we go back 4 years, 2020, and if we have a glance at the 31st December by 2023, more certifications added, more certified people added to the community, and inviting all of you, if you have certifications, please continue by attending such events and getting the PDUs, and join with the chapters, and also get certified if you have not yet certified. And in the Sri Lankan perspective, this is the we have 322 members, active members as of today, but we have 1,000 plus PMPs. Now, if you take the industry-wise members in Sri Lanka chapter. We have more members from IT, then construction, telecom, and so on. So we invite, if you are into any other industry, please join with us and get to know each other and with the networking opportunities. Also, we have our first Sri Lankan to pass the Disciplined Agile Scrum Master certification in January within this month. That is Nithushan Ramesh. I'm not sure whether he's here. I sent him an invitation. So we are going to formally recognize him and warmly welcome to the family. And also he's from the IT industry. And congratulations to Nithushan for being the first Sri Lankan to pass the DSM. Of course, there are DSM in the chapter member registry, but they are not Sri Lankans, but he's the first Sri Lankan to pass the Disciplined Agile certification. So during the past year, PMI Colombo Sri Lanka chapter, we achieved the PMI Chapter Recognition Award 2023 for aiming higher. Despite turbulent times and successfully hosting the last year's National Project Management Conference and the National Project Management Excellence Awards in 2023. We received this award and we are continuing to do the same in this year, and it will be a grand event in the 2024. So also we have announced this during our AGM. We are going to have the Regional Conference and Excellence Award in 2024 at Galadari Hotel. The theme will be synergizing strategies and resilient leadership, advancing project management dynamics. So we will have the conference 31st May 2024. So book the date, and the awards night will be the same day after 6:30 p.m. We will open the applications for the awards. So from any industry, you can apply for this. So not only the local events, we send you all the international events. They are going to be, we are going to have an exciting event in 16th of February with the participation of the CEO of PMI PRA as the guest speaker. I will send you the emails to join this session and share the experience with you. So if you have any questions, you can always contact with any of these channels with the chapter. So now I'm going to introduce you Lee. This was Lee last year in Sri Lanka. So Lee Lambert has logged 50 plus years of project management experience and is considered one of the world's thought leaders on project management methods and how they can be utilized to create and sustain value-added leadership and collaboration capabilities. He is one of only 70 in the world to receive the honor of PMI Fellow. Lee is a past president of the Central Ohio PMI and was one of the founders of the Project Management Institute's Project Management Professional, PMP Credential. His book, Project Management, The Common Sense Approach, is a bestseller in the field. At 37 years old, Lee was named VP of Staff and Organizational Development for one of the world's largest contract research organizations, where he was responsible for creating and implementing leadership development program focused on improved performance for project managers and supporting functional and line managers. During his decades of platform training, Mr. Lambert has provided learning opportunities to more than 50,000 professionals in 23 countries. He is regularly called upon to provide keynote presentation on leadership, communications, and other project management topics. Before his years as VP, Mr. Lambert was a project management evangelist at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory and General Electric. Without further delay, I'm going to hand over the stage to Lee. Over to you, Lee.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's quite an introduction. I every time I see that, I go, is that really me? It's been a long time. I'm 55 years now in this business. and I guess I should have at least one paragraph of description. One of the things I pride myself in, though, is being able to look at pragmatic applications of the concepts of project management to enhance the skills of individuals in organizations. And I must say, as some of you may know, I travel pretty much around the world having this opportunity to speak to groups of project management professionals. I spent some time with Sri Lanka last year, and I got to tell you, I'm glad to be back. I felt there was a sense of interest that I gathered from my last visit to Sri Lanka, that people there really are interested in improving their capabilities as project managers. And at the same time, of course, the chapter that Sri Lanka has created here has grown, has improved, and has shown that they're a force to be reckoned with. And I think that we're going to see that more and more as we go through. This particular topic, which you didn't see on my description, AI was not mentioned in my description because AI was not really an area that I got heavily involved in the early stages of my career. But I'm going to point out some things to you during this time with you that you need to understand that AI is not new. The idea of artificial intelligence is not new. What's really new is the ability to provide the support. I'm going to say computer support, the automated support to crunch information and make it available in a much shorter period of time. I'll give some examples as I go through. If I think of AI in the terms that I'm going to talk about, hell, I've been using AI since I was a little kid, because basically AI has a very serious implication. It's really grounded in information. Artificial information, I wish that wasn't the term that we picked, but because it isn't artificial, it's real. It's real information that is available to project managers that's never been available before. And basically what you have to understand is the real value in AI is the rapid way in which we can process information. The information's there, but how quickly we can get to it and utilize it is the benefit that comes with this concept of AI. I'm going to focus what I say today primarily on the use of by a project manager. I mean, there's a lot of uses outside the executive levels, people that do long-term planning. All of those people can capitalize on AI, but I want to focus on what it means to you, the individual project manager, the PMPs and the CAPMs. And as you see the numbers grow in terms of certification, what you're really seeing there is people beginning to recognize the importance of grasping this concept of project management. So we created the CAPM in order to give people a chance to touch it and feel it and sense it and begin to see if it's got anything for them in their job. If so, then they usually move on to the PMP category. Well, in today's environment, you have to have some basic understanding of AI if you're going to be successful in the use of project management in your organization. So I want to spend some time talking about what the real value of AI is. Now, the first thing I want to make sure that you understand is almost everything we do in project management has one specific focus, and I don't hear this talked about much, and I wish I would, but basically, the whole idea of project management for someone in my category who's actually a project manager is to provide decision support information to those people who have the accountability to make decisions. In other words, the better the decision-making information I provide, the more likely that a more positive decision will be made by those people who are held accountable for the success of the organization. We do multiple projects. Each one of those projects need decision support information. And so we got to understand that that's one of the primary purposes of the process. And the better the decision-making information, the more timely that decision-making information is, the more ability that a decision maker, and if that's you, that's great. I'm proud for you. But most of the time, the ultimate decisions don't rest with people at the project management level. They make recommendations, they make considerations, but generally speaking, decision making is reserved for a little bit higher level in an organizational environment. So we provide this decision support information. Now think about it in terms of AI. First of all, we have to create the basis, the foundation. And that foundation is built upon prior information and planning. There's two categories of information that we use. One is historical. And people don't really understand the criticality of historical information, because if we're going to take that information and project it into the future using the AI concepts, we can get a very distorted view of the future based on the quality of the historical information we've maintained. And if you look at most organizations, although there are some examples, I think, that of organizations that have been saving information for a long time, capturing that information for use in a manually developed way as opposed to an AI way. But the fact of the matter is they've maintained the information. So if you look at that and you realize that if I don't maintain historical information, then using it to project the future, using it to anticipate what the future looks like, does not give me a result that I have high levels of reliability on. And that's one of the areas that I think fall into a problem in AI, is that we take historical information, project it into the future to make decisions based upon, but then the information we find out is not necessarily high quality. So I think this comes up a lot in these discussions about using AI, because in the project management world, when I use it for planning, say, I can look at things that have gone on in the past. And most organizations, whether we like to admit it or not, we do similar projects on a repetitive basis. Our projects aren't always new and exciting. They're modifications, they're minor adjustments, they're projects that are built upon a historical base, but similarities. And so the theory is, if I can capture what happened on every one of those similar projects, then using the AI concept, I can forecast, by using that historical information, how long things are going to take, where they're going to be done and where they're not. And people begin to realize that based on history, I can create a plan that is much closer to reality than what we traditionally do. Now, if you think about that, if you've ever done a project that you've never been actively involved in, and your job is to plan it, this is a horrendous task. You've not done one before. You don't have the history of prior projects. And so your planning begins to look like guesswork. It looks like guesswork unless you've got some historical base to use as a way to project into the future. It's your guess is as good as somebody else's. And so we have to look at that from that standpoint. And back when I was a working project manager back in '84, last time I did any work, don't hold this against me, was 1984. Since '84, this is what I do. I talk to people about how project management can benefit their organization and their career accordingly. So when AI became hot, it's a hot topic, let's put it that way. The first thing I did was I looked back on my career and thought to myself, what would that have done advantageously for me to improve my performance as a project manager? And what I concluded was, in the example of General Electric, working on reactors, nuclear reactors, kind of a big job. But looking at those at the time, we didn't have a lot of history with nuclear reactors. And so we would estimate how long things would take, and then we would capture how long they actually took. And funniest thing, they seemed like they always took longer than we estimated. And so the next project that would come along, we'd do the same darn thing. And so pretty soon you get this repetition of missing your estimates in times and in money for that matter. And so with AI, you see, I capture that data. And then I say to myself, okay, based on the last 4 projects we've done, similar projects, let's take the data that we've captured and project it into the future to represent the reality of what it will take to get this project done. So now I have an estimate, a plan that's based upon actual occurrences in the past. And this is something that would have made my job so much easier, so much more effective. When I used to do that and try to extrapolate historical data, you're looking at hours and hours and days, and in some cases weeks of manual manipulation of data to represent the reality of what it would take to get that job done. With AI, and I actually did a little test on this for some things I'll talk about in a little bit, where something that is I can recall, it took about 2 weeks to do. I simulated that information and put it into an AI manipulator, if you will, and that took about 2 minutes. So it went from 2 weeks to 2 minutes to give me an answer that was 75% more accurate than the one that I did by hand. And so that's that's the advantage we have with AI when it comes to planning, because our plan, remember what we do with the plan, and some of you must remember this, is we create a performance measurement baseline. Well, if that performance measurement baseline is based upon guesswork, based upon no historical relevance, then the probability of variances are extremely high. And so now when we get those variances, now we have to analyze what the root cause is, what the projections are, what we should do about it. And you can begin to see all of this time that has been wasted, so to speak, by doing a lot of these things by hand, by manual manipulation, now can be done through automation using AI and take weeks into minutes, hours into seconds. And that's the advantage it has for us. It doesn't do the work for you. Unfortunately, you still have to do the work, but the probability of doing the work more effectively is increased substantially with that approach. So we have to remember, we want to create a performance measurement baseline that is grounded in historical data. Now, many of you work with people who you ask them for an estimate. Of course, first thing they do is argue that they can't do it because we've never done this before. And you keep saying, well, I got to have some starting point. I have to have some estimate. And so they give you an estimate, and invariably their estimate is low. Now, the reason it's low, so we understand, is that most of us are very optimistic people. We look at the work that we have to do. We think about what will it take to do that, and we optimistically assess our capability. In other words, we say, well, that'll take 2 weeks. That'll take me 2 weeks. And what's that based upon? Well, it's based on a little bit of knowledge, but it's also based on a lot of guesswork. In order to get that in place, and that becomes our baseline. And so then what happens is, I'll be darned, it takes 3 weeks. It takes 3 weeks. I estimated 2, it takes 3, okay? So I capture that data, and I capture that data on a repetitive basis. So now, let's say we're 6 months later, and someone comes to me and says, how long will it take? And I say, well, let me look historically. I usually would have said 2 weeks, but historically it looks like this is a 3-week effort. And so now my baseline becomes 3 weeks. Well, with AI, that's an automated process. So the minute I would put in 2 weeks, I would get a data point that says, but Lee, historically, you always say 2 weeks, and it's always 3 weeks. Well, you see, what we've got to get is a realistic baseline. So when we say, what do I say versus what it actually is, it's what it actually is the important piece of data, because that's what I want to measure on. Now, there's a problem with this, though. Everything isn't upside. A downside of this is when we use AI to project the real numbers based on human estimates, if you will, sometimes management doesn't like the answer, because it really says it's going to take a lot longer than our people are estimating it's going to take. Now, do you want to pick that up early on, or do you want to wait until you're overrun and past schedule before you realize why that occurred? It occurred because you didn't use the AI data projected into the future as a baseline for measurement. So we're creating that baseline so that we can look at what impact does historical information have. Now, here's the problem. Most of our organization, you think about your particular organization, most of the people don't have the luxury of having a bank of historical information that compares estimates with actuals and projects that and combines that into one unit and projects it into the future. So we have to start somewhere. Now, that's why AI is getting a lot of attention, is because we need to begin to capture that kind of information for utilization in the future. We don't have historically. Now, some like General Electric, big companies like that have been collecting data that's used in the AI process for years. So that's why I say AI is not new. What's new is our ability to automatically extrapolate that historical data to represent the future. And that's what we want to take advantage of in terms of the process that we want to be able to put in place. I want to be able to sign off on a performance measurement baseline that's as close as possible to reality. So if the reality is 3 years, but the estimates of humans based on individual projects is 2 years, I'm looking at a 1-year overrun before I even start. And so I have always said that most projects start, the day they start, they're already behind schedule because we haven't used realistic estimates to create the baseline. So, I mean, think about it. If you're a project manager, you're given a new project and you know going in that you're already 25% behind schedule. You haven't even started yet. That's a little bit demoralizing for a project manager. So my position has been over the years, let's get realistic estimates. Let's not be arbitrary. Let's not be subjective. Let's use real estimates as a baseline to measure performance against. And this can be in individual work breakdown structure components. It can be for an overall project. It can be for a program, portfolio, you name all the categories that we have. All of this AI data is going to facilitate the decision maker to become much more effective in selection and execution of projects that are going to return the highest amount of value. Now, what this does, what this gives us the opportunity to do, and some wouldn't call it an opportunity, but I do, is to determine that, you know what, we can't really do all of the projects that we've approved. So we don't have enough human resources to execute all of the projects that we have put into the pipeline. And that's because they've gone in there based on unrealistic, optimistic estimates. Well, with AI, we can ferret that out. We can determine what those realistic estimates say, and then it becomes the responsibility of the decision maker to say, you know what, we can't do all those projects. We can only do X number of projects based on the resources that we have, using the AI projection of our capabilities within the organization. And so what I'm doing is I'm eliminating failed projects before they even start, because I'm relying on sound data that's come from a projection of historical information. So that's the idea behind the AI. What it's given us is an automated capability to do what you and I have been doing by hand for a lot of years. Now, none of you probably as many years as I have, but when I look at that and think about all the time that I wasted, well, wasted is not the right term, that I ineffectively used to project information. It's sad to think about what could have been done with that extra time, that by letting the AI process data. That's what it does. It processes data to represent the best decision support information. It would have been incredibly more effective. When I was at GE on the fast breeder reactor, that's a big multi-billion-dollar reactor for generating electricity. And I was responsible for program control on that particular project. And so we had a very rigorous planning process called earned value, required by the U.S. government, all done manually, by the way. There was a lot of paper involved in this work, and this was a multi-billion-dollar project, okay? So you can imagine the plan. The plan was layer upon layer upon layer of paper, defining work breakdown structures, and then subsequently the work packages that constituted that. Well, the U.S. government, who was the ultimate decision maker in that case, wanted monthly reports. And they wanted those monthly reports based on a comparison of actuals to plan. And that you can imagine how long it took. Those projects would have thousands of work packages. Okay, thousands of work packages. I had a staff of 5 or 6 people That's all we did all month long, was correlate and construct the information necessary for the monthly report. Okay. And so when we reported to the U.S. government, what we looked at was here's the estimate, okay, based on this accumulation of all these work packages up to a control level that we were going to report against. And we looked at all of the and amalgamated those, and then we amalgamated the actuals. We would do that for both schedule and cost. Okay. And we would compare those data points. And so we would say, well, our baseline says it's going to be 100 million this quarter. Okay. That's our estimate. Well, when we added up all the actuals and put those all together in amalgamation, we found out that we had actually spent $110 million. So immediately we know that we are in an overrun condition. Okay. Now, when you're in an overrun condition like that, the analysis is based on, okay, well, can we live with that? And we can look at, maybe we got more work done than we thought we would, so that's why we're overrun. We look for root cause for that variance, okay? And then once we have that root cause for that variance, then we say, well, over time, is that going to catch up? In other words, in the second quarter, let's say we spend 200 million, and now all of a sudden our plan is 200 million, our expenditure is 200 million, so we've caught up. We've done something. We've taken some action that has caused us to equal out. Okay, well, the problem with that is that what management wants, and this is a 1-year contract, what management wants is what's it look like when we get to the end? And so if I look at that and I say, well, the first quarter we planned on 100 million, we spent 110 million. So what does that mean in the long term? Well, you know, that's another manual operation, projections into the future. And so with AI now, we can take that data and this is where I spent a week. I would spend a week looking at all the projections of all the subordinate work packages and WBS elements to be able to make that projection as to what the future looked like. And in my case, I can give you a specific example. We had one contract that was about $1 billion contract. And what they're concerned with, because of cash flow, if nothing else, is that how much money am I going to need at the end of this contract to cover all the work that we've done? Well, I'm going to take that data and I'm going to move it forward, manually move it forward month after month, quarter after quarter, and add all those data points up. And then I'm going to report to management that, by the way, based on the current level of performance, we're looking at a $1.2 billion contract. That's $200 million overrun. Now, if I can do that in the third month of a 12-month contract, what have I done? Well, I've created the knowledge that says I don't think we're going to have enough money based on the performance levels that we're experiencing right now to complete this project. And so I can forecast that, and management can then begin to think about what do we need to do to pull that number in. In other words, we need to look at what the performance levels have been and the amount of money that's been expended, and what can we do to pull that number in. this is where AI would be incredibly useful. By looking at what if analysis. What if we did this? What would the impact be? Run the numbers, seconds. It takes seconds to run the number and say, okay, if we did that and then and then extrapolated that to the future, now it's all of a sudden it's a $1 billion, $100 million project. So now we're only $100 million overrun at the end of 12 months. Okay, well, let's look at another opportunity. This is one of those areas where you can look at best case scenario. You can start to do trade-offs in terms of, if I did this, what would the outcome be? If I did that, what would the outcome be? All because of AI, I can do that in a very, very short period of time. Where manually, I mean, that was a full-time job. I had a full-time job. So this is one of the areas I want to point focus to. One of the big things that, in fact, it's still going on, is when AI hit the deck big time. In the last, let's say 2 years, it's been really pronounced. One of the big fears in the project management world, well, in more than that, but in the project management world was, what does this mean for my job? Is this, am I going to lose my job? Am I going to be replaced by AI? And this was a big panic. I mean, a huge panic. I got so many phone calls from people going, okay, Lee, I got my PMP and I'm a certified project manager, but what does this AI mean? What does this AI mean? Well, another topic, but it means you better get up to speed with understanding AI. Many of them didn't do that. They just panicked they were going to lose their job. Here's my view, and I think this is condoned by many people in the business. AI is not going to replace your job. AI is going to make it possible for you to do your job much more efficiently and use your time much more effectively. So AI is actually going to empower you to become even better than you are manually. Now, I don't want to get into the machine learning and all of those. I want to focus on the project manager's use of AI. And so, yeah, there's other applications. There's dozens of other applications. There's Chat GPT. You can start to do things that God only could have imagined years ago. But I don't want to focus on those. I want to focus on what you have to do. Okay. So now, if I take that same information, let's say we got a performance measurement baseline, and we need to modify either the schedule or the cost, either one, we can start to look at variations on what human resources were being utilized to do the work. In other words, if it's a schedule issue, what would happen if I took a journeyman project manager and replace him or her with a very senior level PMP? Would that level switch enable us to get things done more quickly? Now remember, because we make that sort of an assertion, we can feed that into the system, and it will tell us what the impact overall on the project is from a time standpoint. In other words, if somebody who normally would take 4 hours to do that job, we replace them with someone who can do it in 2 hours because of their significantly higher level of experience, that's going to have a reduction on the schedule. But now you've got to understand, one of the things we know, at least I hope we know, is that when you use a more skilled resource, they cost more money. So now we've reduced the schedule by 2 hours, but what's the impact on the cost? Well, when you feed that individual's rate into the system, AI will calculate what the cost impact is. So wherever that individual appears in the schedule, there's going to be a cost impact, and it will project that into the future. So you can begin to play what if scenarios. Now I did all this by hand, but I got to tell you, one of my really claimed to fame was to be able to identify problems well in advance of their occurrence by doing these projections. Even though they took a long time manually, they were able to produce the kind of information that allowed especially senior level executive decision makers the ability to make conscious, most cost-effective decisions. So I look back on my career, and I would have given anything for an automated process where all I've got to do is feed the information in, and it'll run the impact information for me. So AI provides that capability. It's not going to replace you. It's actually going to empower you. You're going to look like a genius when you can begin to project and forecast very rapidly based on the amalgamation of data that's in the system. So keep that idea in the back of your mind. Now, in conjunction with that, one of the areas that I personally, and again, you're going to get some personal opinion here, one of the areas that I feel is most important from a project management standpoint for a project manager like me is the entire area of risk analysis. Now remember, I looked at the data. In fact, you guys showed some of the data on the screen early on. The numbers of people that are certified in these various categories: the PMP, the CAPM, the ACP, all of those categories. And to my surprise, the top three are PMP. That's number one by 1.5 million. And by the way, I questioned that. There's actually been more than 1.5 million. That 1.5, it's really 1.4 something, is our active PMPs. These are people who still hold their PMP certification, and in some regard are getting their 60 PDUs every 3 years to maintain it. So God knows how many have dropped it for whatever reason. So we may be closer to 2 million. I don't know the data. Nobody seems to know that data, or they won't give it to me if they do. So we've got these. Well, so PMPs first. Guess you might be surprised to know that the CAPM, which is like the PMP for beginners, is kind of what it is. It prepares you to make a decision whether you want to go forward and get your PMP and become a professional in this field or not. The CAPM, and then after the CAPM, I think it's the Agile ACP that is next. And I didn't catch it on your graphic, but I believe that that's the third one. But the point I'm trying to make is nowhere did I quickly see the risk management, as having a very large number of people who have that credential. Now, I think that's a mistake. Again, a personal opinion, because I think that if we're going to be effective in the long term on projects, we need to get much, much better at managing risk. And the AI gives us the ability to do that. Because, as you know, we look, the risk model is identify the event, the probability, the impact, and then what are you going to do about it? That's the fundamental model that we use. And the thing is that you can begin to articulate events. In other words, what if this happened? Well, what's the probability of that occurring? Well, guess what? AI has captured data that talks about that particular kind of a risk event and how often it occurred on a project. So now you've got an AI base that says, I don't have to guess what the probability is going to be. I can come up with a statistical number that says, based on our project history, that particular event will occur 22% of the time. Now, the higher the probability, the more you want to consider subsequent activity, okay? But this is an AI-generated 22% based on how many projects, how frequently that risk event occurred. You don't have to go back and do this manually. You've captured this data. So let's say it's a 40% probability. Now, most project managers would say an event that has a 40% probability of occurring, we better take another look at that. And then you say, well, then when that does occur, what's the impact it has on the project? Well, that same database will have captured that information. And so you can determine by looking at that data, that event happens 40% of the time. And when it occurs, it has a 20% impact on the cost of that project. And by the way, it can have a time impact as well. So I've got those three levels of information captured. I don't have to make it up. I don't have to guess at it. That number, what we know is any statistical averages from captured information are going to give you more reliable answer than one or two individuals guessing, okay? There are exceptions to that. Some people are really good at it. But now we look at that and we say, okay, the event, it's got a 40% probability and it has an impact of X amount of dollars. Well, now you have to make a decision. Can you live with that? Can I live with that particular risk event and anticipate how will I deal with that? Well, then you've got to look at how will you deal with it. Will you avoid it? Will you accept it? Will you mitigate it? Will you transfer it? You have all these options, you see. Well, so now go back to your AI model and say, okay, well, based on these risk events and these data points, what decision was made in terms of how to deal with that risk event? And then you can look at that decision, and then you'll also capture what the effect of that decision is, all based on gathered, retained historical data that becomes the basis for capitalizing on the AI capability. So when you look at that and you realize, wow, this is really going to make my job much more effective. I'm gonna look really, really smart when I can capitalize on this AI database that we have available to us. So we can look at that and begin to see. So I can take that projection and I can use that in a variety of ways. I can use it on a risk analysis for sure. I can use it on basically what the impact of forecasting based on the risk analysis. You see there, it's an integrated data set. With AI, it's an integrated data set. You don't deal with one individual distinct level of data. These are integrated data sets that we've captured on our projects so that we can use them in the future. So we're capturing today's project information so it can be a basis for utilizing the AI concept in the future. And that's what we want to do. And the theory behind this, and this is where AI pays big benefits, the theory behind this is every project we do, we should be able to do it more effectively than the preceding project based on what we've learned. So now, rather than you having to remember what we've learned, and I got to warn you right now, as you get older, and that's me, I'm 70, almost 78, as you get older, you forget stuff. And so all of that information you've captured over your lifetime of experience, while it may have gotten you by for a long time, it's going to start to fade. And you're going to start, oh, wait a minute, how do I? Well, you don't have to do that anymore. With AI, it creates a database that has everything you need in it. And you can begin to use that. I've seen this happen, by the way. It starts, and I read about this because it's concerned me, is it starts with names. As you get older, you forget names. And that's a very frustrating thing for me as a speaker. When you start to speak and all of a sudden you draw a blank on a name of a company, of a person, of a system. And so you really need to pay attention to relying too heavily on your memory. Use the AI database, create the database that allows you to do that, so that you understand that when you talk about Chat GPT, and we're not going to talk about that in any detail today, that's really what this is all about. If you ask Chat GPT to provide you a response to whatever factors you've given it, it's going to reach out into hyperspace, and it's going to gather the information from everything that's out there and put it in a format that is response to what your query was. So you can see people rave on about Chat GPT. What they have to understand is Chat GPT is doing the same thing I want you to do on your projects, but with a much bigger database. It's a sophisticated Google, is what it amounts to. It can give you information that it gets it from places you can't imagine. I don't use Chat GPT right now because I don't have a lot of need for it, but I do use Google a lot. When I'm preparing speeches, if there's a certain point I want to get across and I can't think of the word because I've forgotten it, I put my desire into Google, and the next thing you know, I got everything I need to make my speech make sense. Well, that's what you want to do with AI and your use of the idea of AI on your projects. That is basically be able to capture the data. So what that means for you now, because some of you are just now being exposed to this AI concept, you have to begin to capture data. When we create a project management performance measurement baseline, we have to effectively use very good change control, because change control captures what happened and what we did about it for the future. So if that happens again on another project, I already have a database that says, well, here's what we did about it, and here's what the effect of what we did about it was on that project. So it gives you that information that would be extremely useful. I would have given anything to be able to do that back in my working days prior to 1984. Has this ever happened before? And if it has, what did the project manager do about it? What was the outcome of what they did? Would they recommend doing it again? And all of that becomes captured in your database. Now, this is why you see the cloud has become so important, is that most companies can't have all that storage space. It takes a tremendous amount of storage space to capture the data that's necessary to utilize it in a way that project management becomes much more effective. So I really need you to think about it in that regard. So that we can look at that, and from a manpower standpoint, manpower planning. As all organizations do, we have categories of personnel, of human resources. engineers, geologists, chemists, whatever the functional, I'm going to use the term silo is, where all of those people reside. We have to understand that in today's world, most organizations operate in a matrix mode. So all of the technical resources are captive in one, quote, silo, one functional area in the organization chart, okay? And so our projects draw human resources from each of those technical silos, and we don't want to use that term, but I think it communicates well. We draw those resources out and apply them to our project plan, and that generates all the things that we've been talking about. Okay. And we do that across the board. So our project goes through the resource allocation, identifying the technical need, what skill set do we need, then getting that skill set from the respective talent base and applying it to your project. So I can create the project performance measurement baseline utilizing that approach. Now, here's where the challenge comes in, and here's where AI pays a big dividend. Is that you aren't the only person in the world. Your organization some organizations are doing 10, 15, 20, 30, I've heard as many as 50 projects at the same time, sharing the resources. In other words, that's why we're in a matrix. We can't afford to create a resource pool that's there in case we need them. We have to assume that they're going to be assigned to projects. Well, there's always more projects than there are people, always. And so as we begin to assign the resources, AI will allow us to monitor what the resource utilization base is. And so let's say that you need a level 3 engineer. And so you get that individual assigned to your project, and then 2 other projects also need a level 3 engineer, but we only have 1 level 3 engineer. And all these projects are important, of course. And so now what do? Well, you have some choices. You either stop the other 2 projects, which is doubtful, or you spread that resource across the projects. Now, what you have to understand is in the old days, we could calculate by hand what the impact of that would be of taking 1 level 3 engineer and spreading them on 3 projects. Well, every one of their time schedules are impacted by the amount of availability of that person to work on their project. This causes some serious problems, and if that AI, it goes unnoticed for a long time, because when they look at that, they'll say, I need a level 3 engineer, I need a level 3, and they'll all estimate 100% commitment. Well, that's not true. And so when we determine what their availability truly is, we put that data into the system, it recalculates the distribution and what the impact on the project is. And by the way, that allows the resource pool owner to effectively manage their resource pool. One of the biggest problems we've run into in projects these days is the ineffective management of resource pools, because it's very time consuming. When you're allocating resources across multiple projects and doing that by hand, it becomes nearly impossible to come up with the correct answer. If I feed that into my AI database, and then let it calculate for you what the resource distribution is. And if you look at it, of course, you look at the histogram based on the utilization of resources, and it'll recalculate those histograms based on your redistribution of resources. So anytime a person is out for an extended period of time, it allows you to assess what the impact of that unavailability is on the project by recalculating what the impact will be on the individual pieces of work that that individual is supposed to do. So projections and forecasting becomes extremely important. And if you really think about it, which I hope you are, what you've got to do is look at your projects today and look at what are you doing today by hand, by the normal way of doing it, that could benefit from being automated. That's where it all starts. You look at, you assess your job, you assess what you do in your job, and then you determine, are there opportunities to automate the work that I do? Now, see, here's where the fear, my job's going to go away. They're going to automate what I do. No. They're going to automate what you do, but what you do is providing an answer to the decision support process. Now you're going to provide that answer much more quickly and much sooner, which, by the way, if you think about it, you don't have to be a brain surgeon to figure this out. If I'm able to tell someone a condition exists much sooner using AI than I did using my hand operation, that's that much more time we have to make decisions to assess what the impact would be of those decisions. So you can begin to see the benefits are, I hate to say they're overwhelming, but there's such an opportunity that you need to look at how we're going about doing that. Now, AI is sort of taking over the conversation at PMI right now. They've come out with a tool. It's called PM Infinity, I think, PMI Infinity. I've not tested it, but the people that have tested it have very good things to say about what it can add in terms of value. So we don't create these system capabilities. And by the way, this was created in a very short order of time and very well by PMI, from what I'm told. But we don't create those just to say we've got them. They add value. People begin to see, wow, this is really substantial. I've read some comments on LinkedIn recently saying this Infinity is good stuff. It really enabled me to do some things that I hadn't previously been able to do. So what you have to do is assess what's available out there, realize that this is not a quick transition. You're not going to move from the typical way to the AI way in short order. You have to break bad habits, or old habits, I should say, and begin to embrace the idea of AI and how I can use it. What we have to understand, though, is AI, take this now, AI without people is absolutely useless. People oversee the use of AI. People provide inputs to the database, if you will, that allows AI to do the calculations to provide the information that you need. But people are the ones that make this work. So I have to spend a lot of time convincing people. There are so many people who have actually been extremely worried about these loss of jobs issues. Now, I got let's, for transparency, we have to understand that recently I've looked at, I think Google was one. There may have been one other that I read about. Perhaps it was Amazon, of considerable number of layoffs. Considerable number of layoffs. Now, no one blamed that on AI, although the workers would tend to think that. But I got to tell you, if I take both of those examples, I can confirm quite easily that the benefit of AI is what makes Google possible. The benefit of AI is what lets Amazon deliver your package in 2 hours from the time you ordered it. That's not people running around like chickens with their head cut off. That's AI manipulating processes that put things where they need to be when they need to be there. And so it's made our efficiency extremely improved. Google, by the way, because I've admitted I use it a lot. I will get a response from Google, no matter how really complicated it is. I'll get a response within seconds. Within seconds. Now that says that from an automation standpoint, they have collected a database that no matter what question you ask, somebody's already asked it and somebody's already come up with answers. And the beauty of Google is not only do they give you one answer, they give you choices of answers. That's a big benefit for person and project management, is because if you run into a situation like that, and you can ask a query, and your saved database, not nearly as big as Google by any stretch, but your saved database provides the kind of information you need to be more effective, then you can begin to take advantage of it. And it doesn't replace you. It actually makes you better at what you do. Now, I think what the layoff situation has occurred is somewhat of a problem, is that they haven't come up with the alternate for individuals when they look at these layoff situations. AI has become so effective in the replacement of the manual operation of an assembly line or of a shared database, that they need to find other ways to more effectively use the people. And so we look at this in that way all the time. We saw this with I saw it with earned value when it came along. Everybody's worried that they're going to have to, they're going to be out of a job because they don't know how to do earned value. Then Agile came, and oh my gosh, everybody was scared to death. Agile, what am I going to do now? In fact, I got dozens and dozens of phone calls from my PMP people saying, well, now what? Now what? I went to all this trouble to get this PMP, and it didn't even mention Agile. Well, and that's because in the prior editions from level 5, from PMBOK version 5 prior, it didn't spend a lot of time on Agile. So 6 did, 7 did, 8 probably will. And so people begin to see, well, it's not the end of the world, it's transition. So what you've got to do is you've got to stay ahead of the power curve. So you can look the other way and ignore it until it's too late, or you can do what you need to do to be effective in utilizing this process. Now, do you have to be an IT guy to take advantage of AI? Well, of course not. Of course not. AI, you're not generating, you're not inputting all the data. You're utilizing the data to predict the future, to look into the future. And so the better you are at project management, the better you will be at capitalizing on AI. I had a long conversation with Ricardo Vargas last week, talking about this very issue, and realizing that people need to understand humans are even more important than ever, because you control the quality of what's input into the AI database. And there's a saying that some of you may have heard this before: garbage in, garbage out. Well, that's true of an AI database. If you don't put good data into the AI database, then you're going to get bad data out. And so we want to be able to be in a position where we understand the importance of humans. We understand that they need to have control of the process, but they need to use the information that lives in AI to improve their performance. We look at this in regards to training. We look at this in regards to, what are the key elements in your job description? Well, we can look at that and we say, well, these are the ones we should be training on. And when we're looking at, let's take for example the CAPM. Now the CAPM, we have some target numbers that are kind of scary when you see them, but the fact of the matter is people are beginning to realize life is a project. And so whether I'm planning on becoming a PMP and expert in project management and staying in that career path, or rather I just want to be more effective in living my life, so to speak, because if life is a project, then some of the key elements of project management need to be done. That's why we're trying to teach youth. That's why we're trying to get them into a position where they can take advantage of it. I'm actually volunteering to go to Uganda to a missionary, to an orphanage there, and teach the children fundamental basic skills of life and project management. That's how important we feel it is. We feel that the youth movement is coming along. Well, we need to make sure those youth are involved in it in a way that they can capitalize on the knowledge they gain. So I recommend, this is a personal recommendation, I recommend, in fact, if I were in charge, I would have every single person take the curriculum that would lead to a CAPM. Whether you get the certification or not, that's certainly your choice. But the fact of the matter is what you learn utilizing the CAPM curriculum, which has been based on an idea that from an AI perspective has identified the key elements, then that's up to you. So we started to embrace AI. We started to look at, from a project management perspective, what can we do to capitalize on this new capability of automating a process that once was done strictly by hand. And that's sort of where we want to be. So if I look at that's what I want to make sure that we look at. Now, what we have to realize is there's gonna be some front end investment on your part from the human standpoint. There's going to be a transition phase where you transition from the old way to the AI way. We can't avoid that. If we're going to capitalize on the power of AI, which is unbelievable, then we have to realize, we have to be comfortable that we won't do that next week. That won't happen tomorrow. So the human element has to be in a position where they see what their role is and that they are prepared to play that role. And I think that's something that we're just now starting to get a handle on. And if I talk to Ricardo, of course, he and Bracera have written a beautiful book on AI. I was recruited by Peter Taylor, who some of you may know as the lazy project manager. That's his nickname. And by the way, he's given over 500 keynote speeches, so I don't think lazy project manager applies. But he reached out to me, it's probably been 18 months ago now, and he said, you know, this AI thing is coming on, it's coming on strong. He said to me, I want to write a book about what the impact of AI is going to be on the project manager. And he said, what I'd like you to do, Lee, is write a chapter on specifically what the impact on project management will be. And so I looked at that as an opportunity, which I did. And the book came out. The book, we submitted it as Book of the Year. It didn't win, but we submitted it. And people have used it as a very good reference point. So if you haven't seen that, it's a very small book. It's not going to it's not War and Peace. You're not going to have to spend a month reading it. But the fact of the matter is, it sort of takes what I've alluded to here and puts it in a little bit more detail for you as a project manager in what the AI ability has. And I think Peter did an outstanding job of creating a scenario that says, hey, this is pretty easy to understand, because it can get a little bit complex, as you can imagine. So this is, it's called, it's by Peter Taylor. It's called The Impact of AI on Project Management. So if you want to read a book that gives you in summary what we've been talking about, I think that's the one that I would recommend. All right, so from that standpoint, I don't think we can go too much more detail because until you grasp the role that you have to play, I don't think you're going to understand how that gets assimilated into the project management arena. Now, let me transition now to the executive level, okay? Because I think if you can understand effectively how AI generated information is utilized to the advantage of the organization, then you can begin to see why your role is so important, because without you, none of that information means anything. Okay. So from an executive standpoint, if I'm a CEO, or just even a lowly vice president, for that matter, I want to have the most timely, most comprehensive, and most realistic information to base my decisions upon than possible. And so what that means is, now rather than relying on the, I'm going to use seat of the pants, which is a bad connotation, but based on experience, if this VP has to make those decisions or recommendations based on a limited amount of information in a very less than timely way, then the output is going to be less effective. And what we try to do in project management, at least I've tried to do, is I want to, whenever I'm assigned, I want to deliver the highest quality project in the shortest amount of time for the least amount of resources. Well, in order to do that, I have to make a series of decisions, even as a project manager, a series of decisions that then get rolled up in conglomeration with other projects for a VP or a CEO or whoever that high level is, to make a decision based on remember, they have the guidance of the organization in mind. They have to make decisions not just on your project, but on the series of projects that lead to the achievement of the objectives. And the sooner we can tell the senior level objectives that they have too many objectives to complete with the amount of resources we have, the sooner we can look like we're making positive contributions. So now the senior level executives have some very difficult decisions to make. Do we drop some of these projects? Do we add people? Do we have the resources to do that? All kinds of various decisions that you as a project manager typically don't get involved in, except you are involved because your AI database information is what gets assimilated at the senior executive levels for decision making. All right, so that's going to be, I'm gonna open it up to some questions. I think that I want you to ask questions that are on your mind. Don't try to predict. Well, that's a question that I probably ought to. No, I want questions that you want to think about in terms of AI and how it impacts you and what you should be doing about it. So let's open the floor up to some Q&A.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is your opportunity to engage with our keynote speaker, Ms. Lambert. If you have any questions or you need any clarification regarding today's topic, you can raise your hand or else you can use our chat box. So it is your time. The virtual stage is yours. I think we have one question raised from Ms. Neha Premchand. Am I audible only?
Yes.
Yes, the question is, uncertainty is a new performance domain introduced in PMI 7, which was not there in previous editions. When you prepare baseline estimates, the information you are dealing will contain that uncertainty always. AI should help you minimize the error in your estimates dynamically while feeding actual performance measurements related to progress, as AI algorithm can predict future based on actual measurement variations. What is your opinion on this approach?
Oh, that's a very good question. I think let me give you a little history because it has an impact on my answer. Up till PMICSL 7, we had a traditional process orientation. So we'd go through certain processes. We had six processes, 5 processes. We'd go through these processes on each project. And there was a lot of iteration, by the way, because it's not a first-time thing. When we went to the PMICSL 7, I was one of the first ones that they asked to review that. That's either good or bad, depending on your review. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I felt like for the first time, we really grasped the concept of project management in that it's principle-based. It's not process-based. We have a process we go through, but it's principle-based. And one of the things that I think adds value to a principle-based is it sort of puts a lot of onus on thinking about things from a different perspective, thinking about things from a realistic perspective in terms of the value that we place on our interaction, our collaboration, all the things that go together. So when I start to do that, that's why I'm a little leery of PMBOK 8. That's just now started this last 2 weeks. I'm kind of anxious to see how that comes out. But the beauty with principle-based is that it lets you look at it from a different angle. So rather than archaically process by process by process, now the people are involved. There are a lot of people involved in this process. Now, if I use AI effectively, first of all, my initial estimates, even without AI as a base, my initial estimates will be gosh, you can't say accurate estimates. That's an oxymoron. They will be more realistic. I think realistic is the term I like to use. So using the principle-based, we should come up with a much more realistic estimate of what it takes to get a project done. Now, that first realistic estimate base becomes one of the inputs into the AI database. So now we've got the benefit of having it be based on a PMBOK 7 approach, where it's more realistic from a principle base. And so then for future projects, we're going to see an improvement in the database because it was better going in. And I think I'm all for it, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I think it's going to be something that that we really have to understand how AI works to be able to put that information in. So I think that you're never going to get away from human estimates. See, remember, here's the human aspect. Human comes out, puts it in, AI spits out an answer, okay? Humans have the responsibility to validate or invalidate that answer. So in other words, there's nothing that says I have to accept AI's answer. It says based on what I know personally. Now remember, this is a database based on personally, that AI response is inadequate. So that's the human role. They're never going to replace the human in the concept of project planning. We'll improve the planning base, but at the end of the day, there will be a human that approves that and authorizes that to be the plan.
If you have any question, please ask now. Hope all you have been changed, received the answer of what he has requested.
Yes, I think I'm satisfied with that answer. Yeah.
Thank you. If you have any question, you can unmute yourself, or else you can use the chat box. So we'll keep another few minutes for this Q&A session.
Hi, Lee. This is Harshi here. Could you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Well, it was a lovely presentation and a very positive approach to AI. Loved it. But I do have a quick question and possibly prick your brains on what your approach about now. Obviously, AI is built on big data, but when it comes to big firms or any firm, rather, there is heavy data privacy securities and things like that. So we will be calling information from a database. And do you think when it comes to project management aspect of it, what is your take on it, or what is your aspect of it? Because if you had to relate to our day-to-day lives.
Yeah, that's a good question. I have a fear that somebody's going to criticize. I have a fear of big data. I worry a little bit that big data becomes too big. For project management, I think one of the things organizations have to do is decide in advance some kind of segregation of types of projects or types of activities, so that they don't get a compilation of big data that really hasn't become relevant to their particular project environment. So organizations, I'm working with an organization in Georgia right now that they have about 80 projects going on simultaneously, and they're across the map. They're construction company, but there's hospitals, buildings, there's pipelines, there's you name it, okay? Well, you can't amalgamate big data to represent anything meaningful for projects if you're comparing pipeline information with a hospital build. So I think the categorization of data becomes critical. And I don't think all organizations understand the amount of preparation it takes to capitalize on the benefits of data. And I think the more quickly we can adjust and begin to save data in categories, the more powerful that will be and the much more impactful it will be in the project management world.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you.
We have another question in chat box. What are main challenges that PMs will face using AI-based project management? How to overcome those from your optional perspective?
Well, the biggest problem I mentioned early on is the existence of data. Frankly, I will tell you, in most cases that I run into, the level of data retention from a project perspective has been minimal. And the less you have in the way of information, the less impact you'll be able to have using whatever there is for AI. So the big issue is if you don't have that level of data. Now, if you look at, let's take architecture as an example. If you want to talk about building hospitals, okay? Well, let's talk about McDonald's. What the heck? Let's talk about McDonald's. McDonald's, you see, McDonald's has capitalized on AI, and they can build a new McDonald's in practically no time at all. And the reason for that is over years, as they build, they correct problems, they put that in a database, and the future build has already identified those problems. If you look at that from that perspective, if you think about it in that context, that's where you can get the seven-day Adventists, no, it's Jehovah Witnesses, build their churches in one day. One day. That's because they built so darn many churches that they know exactly what needs to be done, exactly how long things will take. Our projects are not repeated. They're not cookie cutter. But the more we can get closer to cookie cutter, the more effective we're going to be. So we can eliminate the bad, extenuate the good, to end up with better projects. If you look at what you need to do, if you're thinking about really capitalizing on AI, you need to understand how good your database is. What's the value of the data I have? If I have bad data, if I have sketchy data, missing data, the benefit of AI is going to be limited. So those that don't have good data, now's the time to start collecting it. That means good change control. That means good data collection. There's so many things that go into it. When you say AI, it sounds easy. Not easy. It's a lot of work to prepare. It's easy when you're ready, but I think that database has to be there.
Thank you, Lee. We will move on to another question. It will be the last question. How would AI handle contingency issues that arise within projects that need a problem-solving approach?
Yeah, I think the whole idea of contingency is misused and or abused in project management. People sort of ignore it or they roll it into the baseline numbers. Contingency is a risk management issue. Okay, in other words, what causes us to need contingency? Now, if you remember, contingency is set aside for known unknowns. The known is that we know that event is there. The unknown is, will it occur or not? So based on the probability, based on the impact, we set aside contingency to deal with that event should it occur. It's a risk issue. And unfortunately, wow, that's a great question. I love this question. Unfortunately, I don't see risks identified separately in a lot of baseline plans that I see. I don't see a plan that's contingency. There's a baseline plan, and that's what this distribution looks like. And somebody say, well, how much contingency have you set aside? About 10%. Well, is that enough? Well, you don't know if it's enough. When you do risk analysis, you might find out that there are some areas that you need a 30% contingency. But if that's not known, then how we utilize contingency is a problem. And I think right now you've really, the questionnaire has really hit on a very important issue. What it makes you do, contingency is not the issue as much as it forces you to do risk assessment. Because if you're going to have contingency, you've got to do risk analysis. And risk analysis is, as I said before, I think should be much higher on the number of certified people we have. But whether it is or it isn't, the fact of the matter is, I don't think we do a very good job of it.
Thank you very much, Neil. Appreciate you. Thank you, David. We have one more question, Kate, if you allow me to
Sure.
ask. Thank you. What are the major challenges for AI implementation in construction projects where projects are running very remotely, where they are really facing challenges to centralize all data? Is AI practicable in large construction industries where data is totally not reconciled?
Yeah, that's gotten to be, I know a lot of guys that work in construction and never even been to site. They all they're doing is crunching data. That's what they do. I mean, for lower level project managers, people that are doing that kind of work, you can get away with that. For the project manager, if you don't visit the site, if you don't see what you're seeing in the way of data, in other words, you need to translate the data into your real world. Most elevated construction jobs report daily now. They report in daily. How many cubic yards of concrete they laid, how many feet of pipe they laid. That all goes in. And so they have an immediate level of comparison, actual versus plan. That's great. I love that. But that still doesn't change the idea that you need to get a physical understanding of how that all fits together. Can you run a project remotely and never go there? Of course you can. But part of the learning experience is the idea. The problem is that the remote management doesn't see the crane that ran over your pipeline. It just says the pipeline didn't get laid. I want to know, what are the kinds of things that are going into that to cause that to happen? But more and more, well, we see it all the time. When you look at the one ads of about 50% of the placement ads that I see call for remote. Now, is that a project management decision or is that a business decision? Well, it's a heck of a lot cheaper to have somebody work remote than it is to move their family to Timbuktu. You begin to see the remote has some significant financial advantages, but then it has some significant impacts in terms of the lack of collaboration, the lack of building relationships, those kinds of things. So it's a trade-off. But it's more and more with big construction, especially the remote is a product of how good your AI is. The better your AI is, the more effective that remote management should be.
Sorry, we have another question.
Okay.
Will project managers in future needs to have an adequate knowledge in data science as they need to validate the outcome AI complex analysis?
Well, I think this answer is gonna kind of throw you off. Yes. That's the answer. Yeah, I think the more, I don't think the thing that's important about project management is I don't think there's too many areas where a good project manager, a PMP, for example, I don't think a PMP has to be an expert in any of the categories. I think a PMP has to have a very broad base, a very broad understanding of how projects get done. And my theory has always been, and some of you know this from my earlier discussions with you, is that project managers don't do work. Project managers get work done through others. And those others are the experts. Those others are the people that I look to for that technical guidance. In other words, I'm an engineer by training. I couldn't engineer my way out of a paper bag, but I could get somebody that could show me how to do it. And so I really believe in that. It's not that I want to get out of work, because actually an effective project manager gets more work done through others than he or she would ever do by themselves. So, but I think, yes, I think in the era of AI, having a good understanding of data science is probably a pretty important thing to say. Do I need to be an expert? Do I need to have a bachelor's in that? No, I don't think so. But I think I need to be aware of it.
Thank you very much, our keynote speaker, Mr. Lambert, for sharing your thoughts, knowledge, and experiences with this fabulous gathering. Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, as we draw this insightful session to a close, it is my privilege to extend a heartfelt vote of thanks to all those who have made this event possible, and to express our gratitude for your active participation. First and foremost, I would like to express our deepest gratitude and appreciation to our keynote speaker, Mr. Lambert. Your experience, knowledge, and the engaging presentation have enlightened us today. So we are truly grateful for your valuable insights, sir. Thank you very much for your participation. So it is now time for us to present the certificate of appreciation to our keynote speaker, Mr. Lambert. I invite Mr. Dhamika Mendis to present this certification to the Lambert. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a big round of applause to our keynote speaker for his tremendous job. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Welcome, sir. Right. And also, I want to extend our gratitude to the Board of Directors of PMI Sri Lanka chapter for their leadership and the support. A special thanks to our volunteers who have worked tirelessly behind the scene to make this event a reality. Lastly, special thanks to our members and attendees, both near and far. Thank you for your active participation and thoughtful questions, and for being an integral part of this vibrant learning community. So before we conclude the session, shall we take a photograph? Yes. Yes, volunteers, are you ready? Ladies and gentlemen, if you are in a position, please switch on your camera because we want to see your beautiful smile. We have, right? Things done. Thank you very much. Right. Ladies and gentlemen, as we come to the end of this fabulous event, let's carry with us this knowledge and inspiration gained today. So thank you very much for your unwavering support, and we look forward to seeing you in our future events. Until then, stay inspired and keep striving for success. Goodbye and take care. Thank you.